So how did your presentation go?
Well, aside from the fact that there weren't that many people there, it was good. Our message is clear. I think actually the title of the presentation was "Taking Reading to the Next Level," which is
the eFutures, right?
Yeah, eFutures, the IB I mentioned earlier. We developed, a series of 72 readers based on inquiry-based learning, and it's normally we teach reading in class. I've taught reading at university level and at elementary and middle school level, and mainly you teach for comprehension because that's what the kids are tested on. You say read this, or you read something to them, or however you present the reading, and then the most important part for them is how they do on the test, how they answer the 10 questions, the comprehension questions that you give them, rather than what we're trying to do, which is have the students think a little bit more deeply, giving them open-ended questions rather than questions that can be found, the answers that can be found in the text. You give them questions that they have to think about, and there's no right or wrong. They're giving their opinion, and so that's, especially at younger kids, at the level of elementary school kids, you need to teach them that there is no right or wrong answer to most questions, that get them used to giving their opinion, just kind of thinking out loud, giving their reactions to questions.
My guess is kids are fine with that. They're on board. I can imagine some Korean parents who feel like, we want to know what is the answer.
No, that's exactly right. In fact, obviously there were adults in our presentation, and when we asked them questions from level 1, I can't think of the questions offhand that we asked, but you could see the adults in the audience. They were like, I don't quite know the answer to that. Kind of thinking, is there a right answer to that, or is there a wrong answer to that? And so actually, we want the kids to just start thinking and understanding that thinking is a process, and there is no answer to everything. And if they can get accustomed to that when they're kids, kindergarten, first grade, second grade level, then that can carry through their education, and it will teach them to be inquirers, which is basically the point of the whole thing.
And IB is very overt about this, right? There's a metacognition process involved. Like, think about how you're thinking.
Yeah, you think about a question, whether you do actual research, but the idea is you think about it, you do research, you come up with an answer, you discuss, you reflect, and then through that process, especially the reflection, and the reflection is basically, how does that question or how does the answer reflect what has happened in your life? And then that actually leads to more questions, or a modified question from the one you originally started with. And so it's that exploration process that is really, really important for kids to understand and begin to use at an early age.
When I spoke with Sarah earlier, she mentioned some of the textbooks she created today, and I don't know if it was part of this 72-book series that you've been working on or something else related to IB, but it sounds like it wasn't targeted just to IB schools, that it's targeted to bring this inquiry-based model to others. Is that the big project or something else?
Well, what she might have been talking about is these 72 books. They are designed for the IB. They're designed to be used in an IB educational environment. But obviously we have 5 very well-established international schools here in Korea, and most of them use the IB. But that's a very small percentage of schools in Korea and students in Korea. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to broaden the scope, or allow this material to be used by a greater number of students. And so in doing so, we're trying to create more guided teaching material so that teachers in hagwons or in public schools or private schools can use this material in their classrooms with their kids. So that's what we're trying to do. Is we've got this material. It's really great material. It's dense in the sense that there's so many jumping off points that teachers could use to explore, the different subjects, the science, the math, the social studies, the language arts, the art, the music. What Sarah's creating now is how teachers to assist the teachers in jumping off on those different points and exploring the subject matter that is so rich in these stories. That's what I think she was referring to, anyway.
I just want to say hello to Aiden, who's joined us from Taiwan. So we now have a global audience. You've been in Korea forever. You're quite familiar with the Korean education system, and this whole IB approach is really different than the traditional Korean model. Yet at the same time, things are changing in Korea. They're introducing NEET as the English exam, which is, I don't know if it's inquiry-based, but it's at least addressing speaking skills and writing skills. What do you think is going to happen with Korean education? Do you feel like any of these more interactive or inquiry-based kind of stuff is going to be introduced, or are we going to be in Sunung hell, standardized test hell forever?
I think we are going to be in testing hell for the foreseeable future. But one thing I can say about the Korean education system is it's very, very dynamic, and part of it comes from the fact that education is so precious here. It's parents focus on that so much to an extreme, and the extreme has its very negative consequences. But it remains very competitive, and because it's competitive, because it's dynamic, there is a push for change. And even though change, it happens slowly, especially countrywide or within any governmental or bureaucratic system, change happens slowly. But I think Korea is very dynamic, and it's willing to see something good and go for it. It takes a bit to build up that momentum, but once that's there, there is a charge to make things happen. An example is obviously Korea on the cutting edge of technology, and so blended learning in its many different forms is going to take root here. It's already taking root here. It's Korean publishing companies and other content providing companies here in Korea they're scrambling, and they're putting huge resources behind developing systems for learning that are themselves cutting edge. And so Korea is a great place to be for education, particularly for English education, I think. And I think we are very lucky to be a part of that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but IB has been pretty successful in Korea so far. Yes?
IB it's been successful everywhere. And in Korea, it is very successful wherever it is. There are 5 schools mainly that use the IB, one of which is the Daejeon Christian International School, which I was on the board of directors for that, for the period when they were implementing the IB. And so I had an opportunity to see how it was implemented and to take a look at the curriculum, and also to see how the IB kind of stands up against the American curriculum, which was used before the IB was implemented. And there is a stark difference between the results. Just to give you an example, the amount of money given to the graduating class at TCIS rose dramatically that first year that the IB students graduated. There was a marked difference, huge difference. And so it just shows how well respected the IB is around the world among universities, and how big a difference it does make in acceptance.
I was just looking for a yeah. but that's okay, yeah. So it's been successful in Korea, I think partially because it provides an alternative path to this standardized testing horror, yet accomplishes the goal of getting a young learner into university. IB graduates usually get into universities pretty easily. Are there other alternatives that you see on the Korean landscape for Korean parents who don't want to send them to a normal high school? They can spend lots of money and send them to an IB school. Anything else that catches your eye?
In Korea, not really. No full-on programs that are available as an alternative. And actually, the IB schools are not yet an alternative for mainstream Korean kids. They are mainly delivered in international schools, and most of those international schools are the enrollment is restricted to students with foreign passports, Korean returnees who have been abroad, living with their parents, or had been studying abroad for a certain number of years. So it's not a mainstream program at the moment. Although there may be alternative programs out there, alternative schools. But going back to the IB for a second and the testing culture, actually, students who have gone through the IB, they actually test better than students who have gone through a normal.
What test?
Like SATs.
Sunung?
I don't know about Sunung. I don't know any data about Sunung, but I do know, like on an SAT, just this is kind of anecdotal, but IB students don't even study for it because they have so much to do in their schools. So they take it because it's required to get into certain universities, and so they take it, and the huge majority of the time they outscore or they go above. They fall into the highest 10% or 15%. So testing is just kind of a non-issue for IB schools because the program is so rigorous that testing or doing well on a test is just a natural result.
All right, there you have it. Go IB.
Go IB. It's the future.
Well, this wound up being kind of substantive. We'll have to save the chit-chat for later, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have to edit that first part.
We may do that. Always a pleasure, Dusty.
Thank you, and I'll see you again shortly, I'm sure.
No doubt. Look forward to it.
Okay.